Welcome.
Morning, everybody.
Morning, Ian. Morning. All right, so let's start. I'm gonna pause the videos for now, Daphna. It does make it a little bit quicker on the internet side, and if you need then us to switch it back on, I will. Is that okay with you?
Jason, it seems like your camera is, fine. It seems like you having a bit of a lag, actually. Yours keeps on freezing, so I don't know.
So maybe I must move. I'll move to a different room. 1 second, sorry guys.
Oh, can you?
Yeah.
Can you move closer to your modem? That would be good.
Hello, Ian. Okay, I'll be back.
And whilst are you back? Oh.
Okay.
What I'd like to ask you guys to do is to get acquainted with the chat. I think you know how the Zoom platform works. But there's a chat button at the bottom there, and I'd love to hear from you around. So instead of having questions at the end, or not instead of, in addition to having questions at the end, I always ask, what are your questions at the beginning? So you've come to this talk.
Can you find out just where the chat button is, please?
Des, did you have a question?
Can you direct me, can you tell me where your chat button is? It doesn't seem to come up on the, there's things up on the top there, the icons are on the top.
Okay. So do you have an icon on the top that says chat?
No.
And if you look at the bottom where you have, it says mute and it says stop video, participants.
It's mute, chat. Stop, share content, participants and more.
Okay.
Press more.
Yeah.
Is there a chat?
There's raise hand, minimize meeting, raise hand.
Okay.
No chat.
No chat.
All right, Mons.
That's a bit strange.
Okay.
Okay, so you're going to have to speak rather than speaking on the chat. Has everybody else located their chat button?
Yeah.
I've got exactly the same problem as this.
Really?
It's because you're on mobile. Mobile, it's a bit harder to see.
No, but okay, Dave, you look like you might be on a cell phone, right?
Yeah, I am.
Okay, but he's on an iPad. Might be different. Oh,
okay.
That's interesting. Okay.
So we're just going to have to speak to you,
guys who can't be on the chat, you'll have to just talk to us instead. The guys that can access the chat, what I was going to say is, write down what questions you came into the session with. So we know we're going to be talking about leadership mastery. That's the topic for today. Quite an open, broad topic. I'd love to hear, what are your questions on this topic? What are you curious about? What would you like to hear a perspective on in terms of this topic of leadership mastery? And if you can write those in the chat, because it's nice to refer back, and I'm going to give you a minute. And Des and Dave and anybody else who doesn't have access to a chat, you're welcome to actually just tell us what your question is.
All right, so then I'm not going to introduce you, Daphna. You seem to have done it yourself.
We were waiting for you, so I just thought let's give like a task, but I'm going to hand over to you in just a minute. Let them write their questions, and then you can do it properly. And we've got, I think, a couple of people who've joined.
Yeah,
so for the people who've joined, I'm asking, what is your question about leadership? What are you curious about today? Why did you decide to attend this talk this morning? And if it's because you wanted to see Jason and say hi to him, that's also absolutely fine. But if you have any questions, and I'm not seeing anything come up in the chat, so don't be shy. Jason.
Okay, so yeah, for me, I mean, we've had a lot of debate and a lot of discussions around leadership, and leadership comes in many different forms for me, personal as well as company leadership. So how do you conduct yourself as a leader? Chatting to my wife this morning, she says, well, why would she want to be part of a leadership discussion? I said, because you have to conduct yourself as a leader what does that mean to you? It means something different to everybody else, to everybody. So yeah, leadership for me is a very, very broad topic. And what I'd like to find out is the conducting of a leader. There's a lot that comes up for me in terms of what leadership means.
So what is do you have a question that you've come in with this morning that you can maybe share with us? I'm putting you on the spot.
I didn't actually know.
I have a question.
Yeah.
It's about the language we use. And
are you phoning from overseas again?
No, Alex, we're not.
Because it sounds like that like foreign call.
Are you talking to us?
I think he's on a call.
Okay. It's about the language we use and how we do that. So the doing was interesting to me. How we do that with insight and with and some sort of sensitivities. I think we use language like nobody's listening, like we think that nobody's taking any notice of what we're saying, and this is a question, not a statement, actually. But I just get a feeling that people don't understand how people do notice what they say and how important it is what they say.
Yes. Thank you, Ian. I think that is such an important aspect that you are bringing up, and we are going to talk about it. I put it under the label of communication, which for me is an absolutely critical piece of leadership and something that I often work with my clients. So if I just take a step back, and thank you for that question. Actually, any other questions that have come up?
Eugene has written here in the chat. He'd like to hear some experiences about when you fail as a leader. How do you handle it and come back?
Okay.
And then what, Des?
Who was the first person that spoke, Jason?
Ian.
So Ian mentioned something similar to myself. And I'm asking the question, is Ian an older person? My question would be, your lifestyle changes as you get older. So you've got an older person versus the new generation style of business. Okay, and how to close that generation gap with respect, and you use the word sensitivity, Ian.
Yes.
And respect.
Yes.
And it's similar.
Completely agree.
Sorry?
No, sorry, I'm just saying I agree with you.
So you've now got business being done in a very different way. I've termed this the loss of the tribal respect. So when I was in New Zealand, we were at a Maori museum, and you had this particular reference to the respect for the tribe. And what the computer and youngsters today have done is lost that respect for the older person. And I would love to write a bit of a book or a story on that structure. How was your life given to you before by handing down? The computers turned things on its head. The youngsters learned the way forward and so on, and left the older groups behind. And instead of embracing and bringing people in, people have been left behind.
Okay, yeah, I think that's also a very relevant piece. Instead of, in terms of how do you bridge those generation gaps? What's happening between our...
And the leadership there was or is.
Sorry, say that again?
That's the way that the structures have changed.
Yeah, and what technology has done, for sure, and brought in a whole lot of change. Okay.
Right.
Daphna,
Yeah.
Dean McKelvey's written here, he's got a team of consultants. What traits stand out in building the marketing relationship other than just product and presentation support?
That's interesting. Excellent. Okay, great. I love these questions. Thank you so much. I'll go into the kind of talk and what I had planned, and then at the end, I'd like to touch on the points if we haven't covered it during our discussion. I'd like to come back to these questions. I would also like to invite you to continue to ask questions in the chat. And Jason, you're doing a brilliant job of monitoring it, so I'd appreciate it if you let me know. And keep asking the questions. Let's keep this very interactive. I thought for today, I'll give you an opportunity to also reflect a little bit on yourselves and your own leadership. Think about what does it mean? As Jason said in the beginning, there's so much between what we're doing and how we are being as leaders. There is, it's such a broad topic, and there's so many areas of leadership or life that we're leaders in, and I'd like to explore that a little bit more today. So before I begin, yeah?
Can I give you my question now that I have one?
Yes, please.
Is, as a leader, when it comes to feedback, how do you give feedback to your team in a non-confrontational way?
Good point.
Awesome. I love that. And actually, yeah. we can look at that, do a whole talk just on feedback, because there's so many elements that go in with that. But we'll definitely look at all of this. Excellent. Thank you. Thank you for giving me rich questions. I want to take a step back and just tell you a little bit about myself and where I've come from. So I don't know if you've read anything on the website. I know that Jason had put up, but very briefly, I come from the business world. I qualified as an actuary. I worked in corporates for quite a few years, first at Swiss Re Reinsurance Company, then at Alexander Forbes in the healthcare consulting division. I then lectured at WITS in actuarial science, bringing in the new generation of actuaries into being. And then I decided to do this major career change into leadership development, coaching, mentoring leaders. And for me, that change came about as a result of knowing that there's a gap in leadership in the organizational structures that I was involved in, certainly at the time. I've been an executive coach, a leadership mentor for the last 12 years. So if we look back to before then, when I was working in these organizations, the focus or the emphasis on leadership was way less than it is today. The focus was on results, on performance, on what we can get out of the people. How can we squeeze the most out of our people who are our resource to make money? And way less of a focus on who are these people? How do we develop them? How do we look and support them in their career journey, in their learning journey, so that they can become who they need to be in order to be the leaders of the future? There was really nothing like that in terms of the thinking at that time. And that really frustrated me. So as an actuary, I'm very much about trends and numbers and performance and figures and analysis, and it's critical, and you need to look at those measures when you are conducting business. And at the same time, in order to get that level of high performance that we're all striving for, leadership is critical. How do we lead people? How do we bring them along? How do we put ourselves out there as leaders so that our people trust us and can put their whole selves into their work? And my philosophy is really that leadership is about creating the environment for your people to be the best that they can be, so that they can come alive at work, they can love this aspect of their life, and then of course you get the most out of them, you get the best results, and that really is the way to go for that level of high performance which we're seeking. So that's a little bit about me. This is what I do. I've been doing this for the last 12 years. I've got a business that is global. I came from South Africa. I live in Israel now. and I work with generally C-suite business owners one-on-one, and then running all sorts of leadership development programs centering around how to lead in the best possible way, how to know more of who you are and bring yourself into that aspect of work, how to mentor your people, and those are the kinds of programs and workshops that are designed for managers and organizations. That's a little bit about me. I will also say on a personal level, I'm married, I've got a wonderful husband, 3 beautiful children, and yeah, and life is full. Life is full. I've just come back from India exploring a little bit of meditation. So there's a holistic, I take a holistic approach to life, let's just put it that way. And thank you, Jason, for inviting me here today. I'm very excited to be part of this.
Pleasure. Let's have some fun.
Yeah, for sure. And that's exactly the idea. Let's have fun and let's get involved. And I will be doing some talking, but I want to hear from you guys, and I want to give you an opportunity to also take a look at your leadership and, you know, where you stand with it. So the story that I absolutely love to tell, and you may have heard it before, I'll just tell it very quickly, is the Picasso story, the famous story of Picasso sitting in a restaurant, having a cup of coffee, minding his own business, when a woman walks up to him and says, "Oh my gosh, there's Picasso." And she hands him a serviette and she says to Picasso, "Please draw something for me on the serviette." And he looks at her and he goes, okay. Pulls out a pen, draws something, takes 1 minute, and she says to him, "Oh, thank you so much. How much do I owe you?" And he said to her some exorbitant amount. And she looked absolutely shocked. She said, "How can you do this? It took you like literally 30 seconds to sketch this little thing. How can you charge so much?" And he said to her, "It may have taken me only 30 seconds to, you know, draw it now, but it actually took me my whole life to get to this point where I can draw something like this in 30 seconds." And for me, that is the essence of mastery. When we look at what does it mean to be a master, firstly, it's a lifelong journey. So everything that we've done and everything that we've experienced and every way that we've grown as human beings over our lives, what we've learned, how we've developed, has brought us to where we are today. And we may be very good at this point, experts even, at what we do. But true mastery is when you can use all that experience in bringing it into what you're doing today. And I also say that journey never ends. And I see leadership in exactly that way. It's a journey that doesn't end. It's a continual, lifelong journey that stems from, in my opinion, 4 critical pieces. It's passion. What are you passionate about? It's focus, really focusing on this thing that you know is your unique area of expertise. It's dedication and commitment to that art, science, practice, whatever it is that you want to call it. And then it's practice. And you never stop practicing, because from taking your expertise, taking your knowledge, taking your skills, and taking your continual learning. So when it works, great, you've learned something. When it doesn't work, you've also learned something. And that's the beauty of practicing and continuing to practice for your entire life. And that's the journey of mastery. Practice, learn, grow, focus, dedication, and passion. So if we can approach leadership in exactly the same way, know that this is something that is a lifelong journey, and we are always practicing and we are always learning and growing, and something that we can commit and focus and dedicate ourselves to, then I think whatever area we practice leadership in, it can look completely different. So I'm going to introduce one model that I'd like you to think about, and then I'm going to ask you a question for yourselves to reflect on a little bit. And this is the kind of mastery cycle that I use. If we want to be masters, develop our mastery in our chosen field of expertise, we need to be in the cycle of, it's got 3 steps: reflection, insight, and action. And what this means is that whenever, and this circle actually you can start at any point. So if you draw yourselves a circle on your page and put the 3 with arrows and put the 3 points, reflection, insight, action, you can actually start it at any point. It's not a linear thing because it can start with any one of those steps and it just continue. If we can use it in that cycle, then we're really practicing mastery. So if we start with reflection, this is the ability to step back and think about what we're doing. Think about what actions we're taking. Think about what's going on for us. And from that reflection, stepping back, we often have some kind of insight. Insight is about learning. What have we learned? So say we've had an experience, just had a meeting with someone, we took a step back, thought about it, what worked well, what didn't work well, what are we learning from it? And then we come up with an insight, maybe about how we want to do it differently next time, or what we want to reinforce, or a conversation that we need to have with someone, or an email that we want to send and say thank you to someone about. That's our insight. And then we take action. And the action is, what do you want to do with this insight? Sometimes it's clear, okay, I need to thank this person because he did such a great job, send off an email. That's the action. Sometimes the action is, I need to just take time and think about it. Or next time I have this meeting, I need to do it differently. That's our action. How do we do it differently? And actually, if you take that action and do it, there's always a reflection that we can have about that action. And then we're back in that cycle of mastery. Okay. Cool. So, if there are any questions or comments on that, I'm happy to kind of open up and hear from you.
Yeah. Ian, let me just unmute you. Hold on 1 second.
Hi, can you hear me?
There you
Yes.
go.
Sure. I just made a note now, Daphna. I said the way that you're discussing mastery suggests leadership is only available for older people, which is obviously not the case. But I mean, that comment that Des made earlier, and obviously is I'm interested in. I mean, I can see we're obviously of the same generation. They announced the world's youngest billionaire yesterday. She's 21. She has 128 million followers on Instagram. 128 million followers on Instagram. And her name is Kylie Jenner. And she sells makeup over her cell phone. So now she's leading, and she's only 21. And she's got an enormous influence, like more than politicians probably.
Yeah.
So the mastery bit I get, but I mean, like Kylie Jenner is like she's learning as she goes. She's not sure. Where's leadership in that context?
That is so interesting. Such a great question. Do you mind if we hold off on answering it? Because I'd love to have a discussion about it. And I'd love to actually give you the opportunity to do a bit of reflection, because that was going to be my next piece. I'm going to move into my next piece, but I love the question. Right. Thank you. And to say, just on the age thing, that for me, as you gain more experience, as you go through life, there's kind of maybe a clear link between, okay, so if you're older, you are going to be more masterful because you've got more experience and you've got so much more material almost to work with, learning, failures, successes, all of those things. And at the same time, leadership really comes from how you practice it, or leadership mastery comes from how you practice it. So in my opinion, you could have an older person with a wealth of knowledge and experience that maybe is not showing up as much of a leader as he could. Whereas someone who's young and has just thrown themselves into this world, like this example of Kylie Jenner, unbelievable, read about it last night too, just throwing herself into this new world, using technology, learning from her mistakes, learning on the go, and maybe she's practicing that mastery cycle every day of her life, whether it's consciously or not, and really learning and building her mastery at that young age. So there's an age element, because with age there's opportunity and wealth of experience and knowledge and wisdom, but are we using it? Is every older person really using it to practice leadership? And that's what I want to follow into my next question for you guys to reflect on, and that is, I would like you to now write down for yourselves, take out a piece of paper, and just write down all the areas in your life where you are a leader. I'm just going to give you a few minutes to think about that, because it's not something that I find people often think about. So as many areas as you can come up with that where you are a leader. And when you've done that, if you can, either in the chat or by shouting it out and saying it out loud, tell me how many areas you've got, just the number.
I'm sitting with 3.
Thank you.
3. 3. Everyone has been unmuted, yeah. So far there's lots of 3s.
Is it showing? Show us your fingers again, Des.
3.
Also 3. Wow, amazing.
Hundreds.
100. Who said hundreds? Ian.
All our daily interactions, all of them. Everybody we meet. If we meet 100 people a day, they're all an opportunity to influence.
Thank you. Awesome. That's beautiful. Thank you, Ian, for throwing that in. From the people who've said 3, I'm curious if you're happy to share what are the 3, just because I'm curious to see if they are kind of similar for everyone or if you've got different areas coming up. So shout it out or write it into the chat, whatever feels more comfortable for you. Let us know if you're happy to share. Okay, we've got work, home, and church from Hannes. Who else?
I got work, home, and friends.
Work, home, and friends.
Innovation, design, and hands-on person.
Okay, good. Anyone else want to share? Awesome, I love it. So we can see, and I'm actually in a way a little bit glad to see that. I think work and home would be something that would be a thread for most people. And then we have other things coming in where we are leaders. So here we have another one, work, home, and sport. I love Ian's answer, which is hundreds of areas. And I suppose if you take from categories down into the detail, which I'm going to ask you to do very soon, I'd like you to look at that. And I'd like you to open up your reference to actually that every moment of our life is an opportunity for leadership. And we are leaders, whether we are aware of it, conscious of it or not, we are leaders in every moment of our life. It's not reserved for a particular definition of leadership where, okay, so if I am a manager at work or I own my business and I've got a whole lot of people working for me, that means I'm a leader. Actually not. You're a leader in whatever situation you find yourself in. You have an opportunity to be a leader and to show leadership. It's how do you take it? How do you view it? What is your perspective on it? So the next question that I want you to think about for yourselves is to look at the areas that you've written down. Sorry?
Okay.
I'd like you to, and maybe for, not even for now, but sit with this question, and I would definitely expand if you come up with 3 areas, you can definitely think about how many more areas. If we had time, I'd actually make you sit down now and kind of add to that list, because we definitely have more areas where we can be leaders in. But if you take the areas that you've chosen for now, and I'd like you to look at or choose one area that you feel is going really well for you. So there's a flow, you know what you're doing, you feel like you're kind of performing or successful or satisfied in this area, choose that area, and choose one area that you feel is more challenging for you as a leader. So that you are maybe having a little bit of a struggle with, or you're having a particular challenge at the moment, something that's getting in the way, something that's holding you back. I'd like you to choose those two areas, and then I'm going to ask you to zoom in even further into the detail and be specific. So, for example, if you've chosen that the area that is going really, really well for you is home, because you feel things are running smoothly and kind of everything's more or less settled for this minute. I know in the next minute it can change, but things are okay. I want you to zoom into that area and say, what is it that's really working there? So for me, if I had to choose home, I would say like the kind of top thing that's really working well for me in this area is that I just know that and feel the love and support of my husband and my children, and that's something that is always there. I can rely on, kind of my mainstay. So the love that I feel, that is what's working really well for me. So I want you to kind of get more specific about what it is. So for the area that's working well and for the area that's a little bit more challenging, get specific. Okay, and now what I'd love to hear from you is if you look at the area that's going well and now you've chosen something specific that you really kind of appreciate about it, would you say that you have a specific strategy around that? Do you have a plan and that's why it's working well? Or is it something that just happens, kind of just goes with the flow, this is how it is? So like for me, I mentioned the love of my family. I can't say that I have a strategy around that, a conscious strategy. There might be, because I spend quality time, I make sure to have conversations and check in and connect, you know, those are all strategies, but consciously, maybe not so much. I'm curious to hear from you guys. Do you have a conscious strategy? And then if you think about it a little bit more, is there maybe an unconscious strategy that's going on? Things that you're doing that you know fuel those things that are working well. And I'd love to open up and hear from you guys. Yeah, so you don't have to share kind of the example or anything, just, you know, do you feel that there's some kind of strategy at play here?
Well, for me, I mean, I have just unmuted everyone. I think everyone,
Great, thank you.
So you should be able to just chat. But yeah, I mean, for me, I said at home, but no, there isn't a conscious strategy. I think the only one little thing that we are conscious about is eating together. But besides that,
yeah, great. Thanks, Jason. Good. Anyone else?
When it's working, I find that it's about I'm feeling accepting of myself. When it's not working, I'm feeling like there's some sort of competition going on with the person I'm interacting with.
Mm-hmm.
It's not really a conscious strategy, but I am trying to remember to be more self-accepting generally than feeling like I have to compete all the time. And I sabotage myself and it's that it goes, this is full circle back to my first point this morning. Sabotage myself by my language.
Mm.
So I can, and my tone and things like that. So I can come on too strong or too weak. As I modify myself, and I know that I'm modifying myself, I'm far more successful.
Beautiful. That's beautiful.
Thank
And I
you.
feel like you're like helping me segue every time into my next section. So we did not plan this, but thank you. Anyone else who wants to share about that?
Yeah,
The
well,
existence of strategy?
what I feel that kind of helps my leadership is sometimes a structure as well, a built-in structure. If you take a organization such as a church, it's quite easy to practice a leadership role because there's certain structures already set in place. So you kind of step into that role and fulfill, and you just lead out of that. But in terms of a strategy, I mean that there's, like you said, maybe a bit deeper to create that structure. Certain strategies were thought out already.
Great. That's wonderful. Yeah, because I think that what you're pointing to is that the structure helps us with the doing part of strategy, of leadership, or kind of what we need to do. So it puts us into a framework where it becomes clear that we can take some actions and show leadership.
Yeah.
Great. Good. Anyone else? If you want to also just write in the chat, yes, I have a strategy, no, I don't, or somewhere in the middle, or whatever. I'm happy to hear. It's always good to hear from the people who are a bit quiet on the call. So what I want to say, and this is really, for me, always such a great and important topic, is that what Hannah said about the doing, when there's a structure, it's really easier. It's easier to get into that mode of doing, taking action, showing leadership, doing leadership, and getting on with it. But how often do we really take a step back and say, what is our strategy here? When we look at business, or whether you're working in your own business or in an organization, there are always goals, targets, and strategies to achieve what we need to achieve in business. So when we have those hard measures, either making profits, bringing the team together, getting clients, whatever it is, we have a strategy for that. But when we look at our own leadership, we don't ever take a step back and say, what is the strategy that's making it work? So even as we look at whether it's our family life or our home life, what am I doing? What is my leadership strategy that either makes it work really well, or actually, what is a strategy that could help me so that I could overcome the challenges that I'm experiencing? And here I'm talking about me showing up as a leader in this area. So I actually want to share with you, and this ties in nicely to what Ian was bringing up. So I'm going to quickly share a screen with you, just to show you a slide. Okay. Hold on a sec. I'm going to stop this share for a minute because I'll put it in slideshow mode so you can see more clearly. Okay. Share. I want to share with you this slide, which is about leadership strategy. So I hope you can all see it. I think sometimes if you're on an iPad or a phone, could be a bit more difficult. You have to swipe through and see the screen. But this is what leadership strategy. Okay, thank you, Jason. If we look at our leadership strategy, what are the elements that we want to look at? And these have already come up in the conversation, which is really fantastic and beautiful to see. First of all, we want to begin with personal style. How do we show up? What are our leadership behaviors? And how do those serve what we want to achieve? And here, take the area that is working really well for you and to say, how do you show up in this area? So what the example that Ian brought, which was fantastic, about, he said, Ian, you said that you found that when you have acceptance, then things work well. And the things that don't work well, you try and bring in that element of acceptance. This is exactly what we want to do. So Ian's example shows us something about personal style that works for us when things are going well. And maybe we can ask ourselves, how do we bring that in to the areas that are more challenging? And here we really want to do a full analysis of what is driving us. What is our purpose? What is our why in this case? I don't know if any of you have been exposed to Simon Sinek, Start With Why. Brilliant, brilliant TED Talk. Go listen to it. There's a lot of work that can be done to explore your own personal why. I work with people on that. So fascinating stuff. What are our values? What are our behaviors that serve us and our behaviors that don't serve us? We all have blind spots that we don't know about, and finding those out through asking for feedback, asking people what are the qualities that they see about you, really getting to an understanding of who you are and what your personal style is. That is part of your leadership strategy. That is part of how you show up in the world and how you want to show up so that you can achieve what you want to achieve. That's the first element. The second element is communication. And here, Ian, I'm coming back to you. Sorry, I'm not picking on you, but you really, like I said, picked out those points. But how we speak, communication for me is all about relationships. If we communicate, how we communicate, when we communicate, the way that we communicate, the way that we use language, the way that that is the basis of our relationships with people. And for a leader, relationships are critical. You, as a leader, you achieve your results. And again, I'm using this in the broad context, not just in the business context of wanting, the tangible results that we talk about, but even, at home, with your family, with your friends, at sport, in church. The relationships are the things that are going to help you achieve your level of greatness in that area. So communication for me is the foundation of how we show up as leaders, and looking at that and taking very, very good care of that. I tell a story about a leader. I often work with leaders on their communication style, whatever some of them are great, some of them are better, but some of them need help. A lot of them need help. And I had a client that I worked with, and they were going through quite a challenging time in their organization, and he was the founder and chairman of the board of this company, and he wanted to send out a communication to the entire company about whatever the situation was. And he sends me the email, and he says, here's the email that I want to send, or I can't remember exactly how he worded it, and I just wrote back and I said, have you sent it already? And he had, because his style and his approach, in his head, it all made sense, and in his head, it was like pretty organized and factual and whatever, but it was lacking some of the emotional component of just acknowledging the difficulty of the time, or acknowledging what's going on, and really engaging and connecting with the people, which was a bit of a pity because he had already sent the email, and it's been a running joke between us ever since, that now he kind of checks before he sends the email. But those are things that we have to pay very careful attention to. And then the third element is culture. And culture is really about what kind of environment do we want to create? Because I think as leaders, it's our responsibility to create an environment where people can be their best selves, where people can come alive at work, when people can and want to give of themselves, go the extra mile, put in the extra effort. And that is about really asking ourselves, what kind of culture are we creating? And again, this can be taken in the business context or in our personal context, because when we look at culture, our family culture, our church culture, our sport culture. So it can apply across the board. And this is really what kind of an environment are we creating for our people. So in looking at the areas that I've asked you to think about and reflect about for yourselves, I would say take a look at this aspect of leadership culture and what's happening in the area that's working well. Let's think about, step back. This is the reflection part. Step back, think about it, look at the different elements that are really helping you to achieve what you want to achieve in the area that's going well, and then see how you can apply those in the areas that are a little bit more challenging. What needs to come in? What help and support do you need in terms of figuring this out? And then what actions do you need to take? And I actually also created a slide. I don't know why it's a little bit sticking. Hold on one sec. On the action reflection cycle. So let me see if I can find that and share it with you. Which is what I spoke about, the mastery cycle. I spoke about it earlier. Here we go. Here we go. The mastery cycle of reflection, insight, reflection, insight, and action. And it's the same thing. Looking at your leadership strategy, take a step back, do a little bit of reflection and thinking, see what insights come up for you, and then choose actions that you want to take in order to build your leadership strategy and then act with it, and make some changes. This is something that for me is valuable in any situation, any interaction, just to be able to take a step back, think about what you're doing and do something different. And here I would encourage you don't want to change everything. When you're choosing an action, I would say in every mastery cycle, just choose one action that you're going to go with. You can always do the reflection, the insight, make notes. I'm a big fan of, take out a book, create a journal, write down your thinking, write down everything that comes up in your reflection piece, everything that comes up in your insight piece, and then choose one action that you're going to take forward. And you can always go back to your notes and say, okay, I'm ready now for my next action. What's the next action going to be? So I am going to stop here because we've got about 10 minutes left, and I'd love to kind of hear from you. So any comments, and then maybe let's look at some of the questions that have come up from earlier. So firstly, let's just open up for comments, questions on what I've just discussed.
Well, I'm just thinking, can I just say thank you very much? That was a great talk.
Thanks.
Daphna's also written a fantastic book called Leadership Lessons, and it's worthwhile having a look at. And it breaks, for me, what it's done is breaks your leadership lessons, exactly what you've said, into small bite-sized chunks. So you have a look at your reflection action, and you have a look at bite-sized chunks and focus on little bits and pieces. I never ever thought of actually taking leadership and creating a strategy around that. Everyone thinks you just go into it and run forward with that, but it makes a lot of sense.
Dave, I can just add two things, actually. So firstly, the book is called Courage to Lead. That's the
Courage
one.
to Lead, sorry.
I'm going to look for it. And it's called Leadership Lessons from Kilimanjaro, because I climbed Kilimanjaro a few years ago, and I took the connection between climbing the mountain and leadership. What are the leadership lessons that we can learn from that? And the second thing is that even in your mastery cycle and your mastery journey, I think that it's difficult to do this alone. And I'm passionate about creating leadership strategy. This is what I do with people. And I've created this group approach, a leadership mastermind, where people come together in small groups, and we do it virtually because it's a global group that meets. And once a month, we have this meeting if you're interested in learning a little bit more about it. But this is about creating a group of people that can help you with that reflection, insight, and action piece. So the way that it works is that one person comes onto the hot seat with a particular challenge that they're having, and we explore this challenge together. We have between 8 and 10 people on the call, and everybody has input based on their experience, wisdom, knowledge, in terms of sharing how they see the challenge, any advice and suggestions that they can offer. And it's really fun, it's quick, it's like an hour and a half. And if you want to know anything more about that, I'm happy to talk about it, Jason, as well. And that's it. So I'd love to hear some questions, and then let's go back into some of the questions that came up, because I thought they were really interesting. So any comments on that? Anybody want to talk before we move into questions?
Yeah. We can hear you.
Can I go?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
On your diagram where you've got reflection, insight, and action, you put reflection on the top. Was there any reason for you doing that? Because the way that I'm reading it, it generally should be the insight that you have before. From that insight that you've actually got, you can reflect on what you've done or what you're expecting to be done, and then get into action. So I'm not sure that I agree with the way that you've positioned your slide, and that's just me in my, sorry.
Yes, it's wonderful. The beauty is take it and do with it make it your own. And I think that's with anything that we learn. I did it that way. The rationale is that we are often so busy in the action, and that's the doing and the being, the difference between the doing and the being. We're so busy with actions that we just move from one action to the next without taking time to reflect, taking the time to step back and do a bit of reflection. For me, the reflection piece is stepping back from what you've done. You can start anywhere on that circle, and you will, but the reflection piece is about, we are so busy in our lives doing. The reflection piece is about stepping back and being in that being moment of what's happened here, let's explore it, what's my thinking about it. And usually from that thinking comes some learning, and my insight is connected to learning. So after we've stepped back and thought about it, we've learned something, we've seen something new, we've come up with an idea maybe that then we want to take action on. So that's the rationale, but feel free, whatever makes sense.
Okay.
Good. Guys, can I maybe just leave you with an interesting quote I heard a while ago?
Yes.
That talks a bit to leadership, and it kind of changed my perspective on a couple of things. It says, well, I can't remember it completely, but it said something in the lines of, a good leader listens to their people and guide them in a way. But the best type of leaders makes the person they're speaking to feel like the most important person in the world, and in the same time they also inspire those people. So, and we all know inspired people are the best type of people. So I think as a leader, that's kind of my goal or focus when I try and lead.
Thank you, Hannes. I think that's awesome. I don't know if it's related, but there was it's said about Bill Clinton exactly that when Bill Clinton, when you were speaking to him, he made you feel like you were the only person in the room. And that is an amazing thing to be able to do. So absolutely. Thank you.
I am just picking up on that comment by Hannes. I'm often referred to as being an inspiring speaker, but, and it's a huge but, it's my biggest takeaway from this morning, the how I speak, the tone, the style, the timing, I shoot myself in the foot. And that causes the opposite of inspiration, dispiriting atmosphere around me, depressing. So I've learned a lot. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
And I think the kind of, for me, the piece there is the stepping back. So when you've had a communication, if you noticed that something was off, it didn't really land in the way that you wanted, it's about stepping back, reflecting on it. What could I have done differently? Learning from that, and then trying something different. To try something different is also putting ourselves out there. It's being vulnerable, because what we know feels safe and comfortable for us. But now we've got to try something different, and how will that be received? And what will people think, and all of that. So it really is not an easy thing to do. It sounds simple with these little models that we look at, but it goes deeper than that. Yeah. And about also asking for feedback as well, because we're often in that area of blind spots where we don't really know what we're doing that's impacting the people around us. Okay. Great, thank you. I've really enjoyed this conversation. I'm happy to, Jason, what do you think? Shall we look at a couple of the questions? We've still got a couple of minutes before we end. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I'm happy to, if there are any questions, there's anybody you got before we end off. I've just got one or two things I'd like to do. Just mention about what's happening what month are we in? March. What's happening in March. But before we get there, is there any other questions that are coming up? And really, Daphna, that was fantastic. And hopefully you'll join us again, and don't run away.
Awesome. I'm in Israel. Okay, now I think we've got 3 minutes. I'd love to say that some of the things that were asked about respect, let's just look at the language you covered, closing the generation gap. Okay, there was your question about feedback, and there was a question about my examples. Maybe we don't have time for everything. The model of the leadership strategy can certainly help with looking at some of those generational issues, There was a question around marketing relationship beyond the product. So that I think also ties into leadership strategy. So some of the models can help answer some of the questions that we've had. If there are any other questions that are left that you'd like to talk about, I'm here, I'm available, happy to hop on a WhatsApp call, really easy. Or also, I'm inviting you to join me on my LinkedIn and Facebook networks. I often share videos, so I use some of these questions and I answer them in a video format on the social platforms. So please connect with me. Also sign up, I've got a weekly newsletter if you're interested in that. But connect with me and you will, we can start the conversation. I'm all about having conversations and I invite you to do that. So over to you, Jason, for your announcements, and thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks very much for
Thank you.
being today. Thank you. So Daphna, your mastermind, I think you said was taking place also in March, eh?
Yes, there's one next week on the 13th, Wednesday.
Okay, my father will be at
It's every second Wednesday of the month. So if you can't make it next week, there's one happening every second Wednesday. I think October is just moving to, I think, the third week because of Jewish holidays, or the first week. I've moved that one. But generally, it's every second Wednesday of the month. If it's something that you're interested in, yeah, just let us know.
Okay, lekker. And then for our monthly talks from Correlation Coaching side, which is what we're calling ourselves, we're going to continue with leadership discussions throughout the year. On the 20th, Ian is doing a talk on matters of moment, and he can give you a little brief insight as to what that is about. But yeah, hopefully, Daphna, I'm going to continue marketing your videos. I think they're great. And if anybody does want to get in touch with us or with Daphna, I do have all of her contact details. And yeah, thank you very much. So Ian,
Jason,
let us know a bit about your talk.
Yeah, I want to come to that.
No, only South Africans.
Oh.
Daphna.
Yeah.
What, Des? So I didn't hear you.
I want to ask Daphna, Jason, about my product that I want to talk about with you possibly having been in the insurance industry.
Afterwards.
Can I discuss that with you?
Afterwards.
Afterwards, please.
Sure.
Yeah, so we're starting a series of conversations on Wednesday the 20th at 7:30 South African Standard Time, called Matters of Moment, which sort of had its origin socially, I think, just people saying, what on earth is going on in the world at the moment? Why am I bewildered? Why am I scared? Why do I feel insecure? And I put together a list of questions which are just, there's 12 or 13, which are just the tip of the iceberg, really, around people being mystified, fed up with Trump, Brexit, with what the political things all around the world, and are they connected or are they not? And so Jason and I are facilitating a series of conversations around matters of moment, things that are important to people, ordinary people, and allow them the opportunity to listen to views and to air their own views and reflect and learn for an hour, but regularly, probably certainly every 2 weeks. Maybe we'll see how frequently as we get into it. But the first one starts in 2 weeks today at 7:30 on the 20th. Thanks, Jace.
Cool.
Lucky.
All right. Thanks, everyone, and have lovely days.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dave.
Thanks, everybody.
Very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Cheers, Dave.
Bye.
Cheers, Jace.
Riding the Argus, he's going to smash it.
Good luck.
Thank you.
All right.
Daphna?
We'll
Yes.
stay on. Just give it 1 second.
Okay.
I'm going to also just stop the recording. And get rid of Alex. There's Alex. Yeah.
Bye.
Thanks, Daphna. That really was like